Hey guys, it's Bill back again, and it's 2021. Thank God we made it through 2020. Look, I wanted to bring back one of our most popular guests, and that's Frank Mong from Helium, and he's here to talk to us about all the increases in the Helium network, the token metrics, the improvement plans that have been happening over the past year or so. And really, this is one of those projects that we caught early on, made sense. There was a lot of high attention around the investors that were involved, but really we saw what we thought would be groundbreaking technology. And I'm staring at my Helium device right now, and I'm happy about it. I'm happy that it's been running for the past year. So Frank, you need no introduction here, but let's hear a little bit about yourself quickly, and then we can go into kind of the improvements and the different events that have been taking place on the Helium network.
No, thanks, Bill. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me back.
Sure.
It's good to see you. You haven't changed since 2019.
Yeah, I think your hair grew a little bit, but that's it.
A little bit. COVID haircuts.
Exactly.
It's hard to come by. So,
yeah.
Well, look, for everyone that's new to your channel, certainly new to Helium, my name is Frank Mong. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Helium. I've been with the company for over 3 years now. Background-wise, I've spent the last 25 years in cybersecurity, in various roles in business development and marketing leadership. But 3 years ago, made the best change career-wise in my life by joining Helium, joining Amir, Halim, and the rest of the team. A quick intro for Helium. Again, I know many of you have already heard this before, but Helium is a Series C startup backed by Silicon Valley heavyweights. Company started by Amir Halim and Sean Fanning of Napster. And the company started about 8 years ago now. The mission from day one, when Mark Benioff and Coastal Ventures backed the company, was, and this was 8 years ago, was to create a network that's ubiquitous around the world, that can connect IoT devices very cheaply and in a very open way. That mission has been the same mission through our Series B funding with Google Ventures, who led that. And more recently, not that recent anymore, back in 2019, our Series C round was led by Union Square Ventures and Multicoin Capital. And that's roughly 3 years ago or so, 3.5 years ago or so, is when we figured out that to build a network to provide coverage ubiquitously around the world, Helium Inc. can't do it. Helium as a company can't do it alone, as a individual company, as a centralized entity. We've sort of seen history in the past of people who've tried that. Companies like Ricochet back in the 90s, and then in the 2000s, companies like Meraki. They were lucky; they got bought by Cisco. All had aspirations of creating either citywide Wi-Fi or citywide network coverage using unlicensed spectrum. And so as Helium thought through this path, we really had no way of doing this. And blockchain became a critical piece of technology that came at the right time for us 3.5 years ago. In 2018, 2019, blockchain, Bitcoin, Ethereum in 2018, 2017 became a household word. We thought, what if we could put Ethereum or Bitcoin or something into our hotspots, into our IoT gateways? Maybe if we did that, we could somehow co-opt the individuals, consumers around the world to build a network to connect little Internet of Things, and they would own and operate it. So it's kind of like a Airbnb model, except Airbnb doesn't own this, and Airbnb, in this case, Helium doesn't own any of it. We open source it all. It's owned by individuals, owned and operated by Bill and by me and whoever, anyone listening here who's participating. And we call it the People's Network. But the way it works is, I actually might even have a little
like the
highly sought after Helium hotspot.
Yes.
These are sold out, unfortunately. But this is we call it the OG hotspot. This is the original hotspot. But we built this when Bill talked to me in August of 2019, when we first launched, to do two things. One, it mines the cryptocurrency HNT, which is the Helium blockchain. And we couldn't use Bitcoin or Ethereum or any other crypto. We wish we could, because of our primitive, like these things operate individually and they need to be able to identify themselves to a blockchain, talk to a blockchain, and prove that they're providing coverage, which we call proof of coverage, POC. And so those primitives and ideas do not live on other chains. So we couldn't do it at the time. And so unfortunately for us, we had to go build our own blockchain, which I don't recommend to anybody. It's not easy. It's very difficult.
It's not.
But we had no choice. And so at that time, we had to do it. So in doing so, this thing mines cryptocurrency for going through the motions of POC, proof of coverage. And it also transfers data from little IoT devices like this little tracker called Kiko. It's from South Korea. This thing transmits over 900 megahertz in the US. It's an unlicensed spectrum, and it can transmit signals for like miles away. And if this is in your house, you could hear it for miles away. And what you do is when you hear this data, you transfer the data back to its owner or the server that is collecting the data. And so that its owner knows where the item is. And that could be like a backpack, a purse, a kid or a dog or whatever you can imagine, or bike. And those are the devices that would use this network. And you would get rewarded for transferring that data. So you're mining essentially in two ways. One, for proving coverage, which is just sitting there and doing peer-to-peer blockchain communications, proving yourself to the rest of the blockchain, the rest of the community of hotspots. And then the other piece would be just transmitting data as the data comes near you, or you hear the data, your hotspot hears the data and you transmit that data back. You're rewarded in HNT for that. So that's the system we created. And that's sort of the education for folks listening on how the Helium blockchain works and why it's important to this ecosystem. And so in 2019, when we started, we launched, when I talked to Bill then, we launched in Austin, Texas, and we had roughly like 100 Helium hotspots in Austin, Texas. And we launched in Austin, Texas, not because we're based there. Our headquarters are in San Francisco, California. But we launched in Austin, Texas because there was a large community of a combination of IoT enthusiasts or IoT engineers and crypto enthusiasts, blockchain engineers. It was a nice balance of both. And because we straddle the lines there on innovation in both those marketplaces and both of those industries, we thought maybe the people there would kind of understand what we're trying to do. And lucky for us, we were pretty much right. And that's all by luck, by the way. No, one of our product marketing folks did the research to pick that place. So it was very well thought out.
Yeah, Multicoin is in Texas as well.
Multicoin right? Happens to be in Austin, Texas as well. Yeah, nice. And so that was where we started. And back then it was 100 hotspots on the network. And I got to check my notes now because things keep changing. But now we're at 18,495 or something, or you call it 18,500 hotspots. Not just in Austin, Texas, but thankfully around the world. 3,000 cities covered, and we're obviously in North America, but also growing rapidly in Europe. And roughly 2-3 weeks ago, we actually started our first real launch in China. We've had some fits and starts there, mostly because that market's very different. And we really needed time to get a supply chain ramped up, both manufacturing as well as distribution models for China to be able to serve those customers properly. So 2-3 weeks ago, finally, we got that put together with some partners in China to launch. So now we're shipping, hopefully this month, I think, or March, we'll be shipping in China. Many more units are on order for United States, Canada, as well as all the European countries. And so that's quite a lot of growth, I think, for us. Still early days, of course.
So where are the most devices active right now? Is that continental US at this point?
Yeah, so the network has the most concentration in the United States. And I would say like a good sort of gauge is in most of the NFL cities in the United States have very good coverage. And I would say very good coverage would be like 90% of the cities covered with Helium, the People's Network, Helium's, blockchain network. And usage, and that's just the 30 top NFL cities. And outside of that, I would say there's another 100 with incredibly strong coverage in urban cities that's not considered NFL, but they're also decently sized cities in the United States. And those cities are very well covered as well, 80% plus coverage with high usage, I should add. In most of the urban cities now, you can see for yourself what the usage looks like. If you just go to mapper.helium.com,
Yeah, I think
is the
you can
URL.
see it on the app itself, I believe. So, COVID-related question. So, obviously, the cities were a huge area where a lot of these devices were kind of put up. So, I
Yep.
know New York started off pretty heavy. Did you guys see any type of negative impact with COVID? Obviously, the tri-state area, we saw an exodus from people leaving the city. But
Yeah.
did you guys see anything that would reflect on your end?
No, COVID is and continues to be an unfortunate, problem for many people in the country, including us individually as well as a company. But fortunately, one of the side effects I think of COVID is that because everyone has to stay home and shelter in place for too long, I think a lot of folks were able to find helium. Perhaps, if life was normal pre-COVID, everyone's traveling, people have jobs and, different struggles, and maybe wouldn't have the time to explore what helium is all about. And that changed for us as a company and as a community. I don't know. I don't know if I can attribute this directly to COVID, but from the COVID point on, our community has grown massively. We're probably well over 100,000 people now as part of the Helium community. Just our technical community alone on Discord, I want to say is over 14,000 members now. And they're very active on Discord. So if you're curious, you don't have to be technical. If you're just curious and you want to ask questions for yourself to better understand or do research on this, you should definitely join our Discord group, discord.gg/helium. And I'll give you all the links, though. You can post those.
Absolutely.
And a great place for everyone to just chat. And newbies are definitely welcome. Everyone's very friendly. Everyone is, by and large, very familiar with the technology from the ground up. Everything is open source and published, so it's out there for peer review. It's also out there for security review, all of that. So it's in a very good place, and we're growing rapidly. And and that's all during COVID. A lot of the expansion occurred during COVID. So I do attribute that to potentially just people having time and taking the time. I'm very thankful for that to learn about helium and seeing it as another option for them, and potentially an option for them to help us grow the network.
So what I thought was super interesting was, as you guys began to expand and as we saw more and more units join the network, we saw kind of a second-hand group of people that were tweaking the devices that they have, right? So they get larger antennae, they get a bunch, they're strapping it to different parts of the house. There's a community growing. It's kind of this really neat organic movement. I saw these people that were attaching them to trees and using electrical wires outside and going underground. That's so cool. I mean, you got to feel pretty proud that there's people going to the length that they are to kind of build this network literally from the ground up. So any comment there?
Yeah, we definitely attracted, I think, a lot of what I would consider self-starters, motivated individuals who either have experience tinkering with hardware or tinkering with radio signals. So imagine the old ham radio guys that are really into the physics of the signals. Helium lends well to that audience because the hardware that we've used is all off-the-shelf hardware. Anyone can buy it from many different sources, and they can build it themselves. And the signal of unlicensed spectrum that we use, which is, for those that don't understand, unlicensed spectrum, 915 megahertz. If you're my age, when you were little, your family all had these cordless Panasonic phones. And the way those cordless Panasonic phones worked was that the old ones used 900 megahertz or 915. And that was a radio signal you can use to carry the voice chatter to connect your cordless phone to the base. And then you can get calls and stuff wirelessly, right? So we were kind of that's what I grew up with. You're probably too young for that, Bill. But maybe a lot of your listeners know what I'm talking about. But that's the same technology we're using. So it's been proven. It's been around for 60 years or whatever, maybe a little less, 50 years. And so it's common. And what that does is it allows anyone to really play with it and get really into it. And the fact that we supported something called LoRaWAN, which is a protocol for the connectivity that's open source from LoRa and a company called Symtech, that also introduces helium into a massive ecosystem of IoT engineers, IoT tinkering, IoT professionals, or hobbyists. And so we really, I think, have done a decent job, at least, of breaking into that community and nurturing that community to do all kinds of stuff, from enhancing their ability to hear IoT signals, right? And which would then in turn enhance some of their mining capabilities, because just like this is physics, it's not magical, it's just physics, which sometimes seems like a black art. you gotta like put the antenna of the Helium hotspot as high as you can so that it has as little obstruction as possible. No walls or roofs, no trees. If it had that clear line of sight, it can literally, the signal can go as far as the Earth's arc. So Earth has a physical arc. And so technically it has that range capability. And so you see that, you see people really push the boundaries of physics and also allow their curiosity to, enable them to create things and try things. Some things work, some things don't work. There's all kinds of things related to signal losses of like the length of cable, the kind of cable, the shielding. And so I think that's gotten a ton of hobbyists involved, which is great. We love that. And they're the folks powering the network.
Yeah. So you touched on a couple different things, and I wanted to hit this real quick. The ham radio community, there's radio licenses that are needed, of course, for some odd and strange reason in the US. Just so everybody's clear, there's no extra licenses that are needed for this at all. This is using a very specific frequency, and can you just expand quickly on that, and then we can move on?
Sure. Yeah, the frequency in the United States is called US 915, and it's an unlicensed spectrum where the US government has said, hey, like this spectrum of waves, anyone can use. And there's guidelines. So the FCC provides guidelines on how you use it, how long you can occupy the channel, how much power you can apply to it to send a signal. So those are all well-defined, and our products fall within those guidelines. And so it's plug and play really for most people, unless you want to go and, add an antenna, and adding antenna is fine. There's antenna boosting capability. Those are all within regulation of the FCC. There might be some things that are like powered antennas, maybe not okay with the FCC, but you'll have to look that up. Or join Discord and ask in our antennas channel, because somebody will tell you.
There's a lot of knowledge there, yeah.
Oh, tons. And I'm sure there's people in the FCC in our groups playing around with this stuff as well.
So next question, can you shine some light on the circulating supply and the direct role of the Helium token itself, and bring us up to speed kind of where we are currently, and is there a set amount that's going to be mined similar to kind of like Bitcoin? How does this play out, and is the community involved enough to change some of this outcome? And do you see this kind of evolving into a community-run type project?
Yeah, and I mentioned this earlier where I think everything is open source. The other part of open sourcing is also governance of the open source project and having independent third parties really drive the future of the network itself, because it doesn't belong to Helium. It's owned by everyone. And so how do you organize in a way that the intent and vision and purpose of the community is reflected? And so we did form an alliance. We kicked off an alliance called Decentralized Wireless Alliance, or DY Alliance. And we probably kicked it off like 6 or 8 months ago. And the alliance itself it's an independent third party from Helium. And we're a member of it as well as anybody else that wants to be a member of it. And the alliance drives a lot of the community consensus, monthly community calls on Zoom, as well as having community members request something called a HIP, a Helium Improvement Process, or Helium Improvement Proposal. And that HIP drives a lot of the changes to the Helium blockchain or adds features to the Helium blockchain. And so there's an entire foundation called DY now. You can look it up, dy.org. That is the governance and guiding of all this. Now, it's not perfect. They're understaffed. They just hired their first employee not that long ago, a guy named Scott. Nice. So you can reach out to Scott at dy.org if you have some questions or ideas about DY, but it's definitely going in the right direction. And the goal is ultimately DY owns the open source intellectual property, and they manage and maintain the network, and they're supposed to represent the members of the network, which is everyone involved. And so that's where the governance is going. And it's a work in progress. And so we're doing our best to push that along. And like one of the things we hope to do is have like a Helium or DY conference when we can all get together and be together in the same place. I think that would be fantastic to meet everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's something that DY is probably going to organize, and Helium will definitely support. And as far as like the circulation and supply of tokens, something between when we last talked and now, one of the HIPs proposed by the community was to cap the supply, because Helium's HNT mining was a limitless supply. And the community felt like it was very difficult for folks to understand how our supply worked and how the system worked. A lot of it is because of the IoT element. A lot of folks in blockchain and crypto are very focused on the application itself, and it's very software oriented. So when you start to get into the hardware piece of it, Helium is almost like below layer one in the sense. We have both layer one as a protocol, but we also have hardware, which most other blockchain specific projects don't have that. And so there was already a lot of complexity. And then adding the fact that it was hard for people to understand the token economics, the community decided, let's just cap it, 223 million, cap it, have halvings like Bitcoin, and have it on that schedule so that folks understand. And that seemed to have worked. That helped a lot of the crypto audience understand the economics better. And so that's why the change was made. Again, it was proposed by the community. And so that occurred, I don't know. I don't even remember when it occurred. A few months ago?
Yeah, like
6 months ago?
4 months ago,
yeah.
Something like that, I think. Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, myself personally, I definitely saw probably, obviously, this time last year into the summer, checking the app, you would see daily would be increasing, and it's appeared that it's gotten a lot harder to mine those tokens. So is that part of the process that was proposed, and that's kind of one of the outcomes in reducing the inflation of the token itself into the community, but it's becoming more difficult, which I think was intended, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the mining, when you start, you're one of the first ones to start mining. So you have to remember, when you were mining, you were probably in the pool of like 200 hotspots out there.
Yeah, I think I was the one. I think I was the first one in Connecticut, I think so.
Yeah. So Bill, you have to remember, like, if you were that early,
yeah,
the mining rewards of 5 million per month were split between you and like 100 other people, dude. 100 other hotspots.
Yeah.
You hit the jackpot, right? You're in early and you were just crushing it. Now, the mining rewards are split across 18,000 plus hotspots. So just size alone and just doing the division there impacts your mining rewards. No question about it. But, I think most people, maybe not all, but most people look at this as a very long-term play. Like, it
Absolutely.
Doesn't take building a wireless decentralized telecommunications system that's global probably is going to take longer than a year and a half, Bill. I don't know.
I would say so. Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption.
Yeah. And if we were talking to like AT&T or T-Mobile today, they'd probably say it'd take 20, 30 years. So if we can achieve this in the next 2, 4 years, 5 years, we're crushing it in the record books there.
So switching topics a little bit. So you've got the token element.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the relationship between some of the VCs that you talked about. And I don't know how much you can get into, but I'm curious from Union Square Ventures, you mentioned Google. Are they involved from the equity standpoint? Are they involved in a token standpoint? How does that play out? What's the relationship between those? And can you give any details in terms of the expected continued series for you guys in terms of raises and who's going to be involved?
Sure. So in Series C, it was very unique. We did a round of funding in Series C that was both equity and token based. And so to achieve that, one of the things we did was we really wanted to align both Union Square and Multicoin Capital with the previous investors. And so the way we opted to do that and to achieve that was we had to basically put everyone on the same page. Everyone has equity. And so there's an equity component to it. And the token component is something called a Helium security token. So that's not a utility. That's absolutely a security. And everyone has to get KYC'd, and you're investing in it. It's an investment vehicle. And HSTs were basically created as part of our token economics so that the investors in the network, as well as Helium, had a way to actually benefit from the growth of the network, or because we're paying for it. Like, we put money to create the network, to get it started. And so as a way to give everyone a skin in the game, essentially, all of our investors, whether they're from seed, angel to Series C, all have a form of HST, Helium Security Token. And for those that don't know, HST is essentially a built-in token that collects a percentage of the network mining rewards on a monthly basis. And it started off at like 35%, and it drops 1% per year, and it flattens at 15% after 20 years or whatever it is. So we're now at like, I don't know, 34, 33%, something like that. And so it just keeps going down. But it's just a way to keep our investors aligned with the efforts, as well as essentially to reward them for fronting the money in the beginning. And so that's how that investment round went. Very complicated from a legal perspective.
Yep.
I don't think it's ever been done before. And when you think about, well, what's so complicated? The complicated is actually taxes. Taxes was probably the most difficult part of that round. Treatment of security tokens, and how does the IRS look at that? And those are all, we're just so early. So those were undefined. What makes it hard isn't the IRS, it's just undefined. When things are undefined, you don't know what to do. So that was the previous round. Looking ahead into future rounds, we don't have any plans right now to raise any more venture funds. We don't know. We have lots of friends. We talk to a ton of folks in the venture world, both traditional venture as well as crypto. And so we're in touch all the time, as well as most startups are. But, we're sort of just, updating folks as they want to be updated. And if folks are interested, they come to us, but we don't have any formal plans right now.
So you touched on one thing that I wanted to get to as well. In terms of the device itself, and then you earning the Helium tokens, I think the best probably way to look at it is similar to Bitcoin mining, Ethereum mining, or staking. So like the IRS, in terms of the IRS, this would be earned income. I guess you'd have to talk to your tax advisor, but folks that are hesitant potentially with getting involved, like, this is treated exactly the same as if you were one of the early miners, or even if you're mining some of the other cryptocurrencies out there, or staking some of them out there. It's very much similar in terms of being treated that way for taxes. So
it's well defined. You can Google it now. IRS cryptocurrency. You can look it all up.
Yeah. So don't be afraid in that realm. Jump in, get involved. What is the wait list look like right now in terms of manufacturing? Is there a backup? When can people expect to get a new, fresh round of Helium devices out? And then finally, is there an upgrade coming? Is there a bigger device? Is there a way to combine devices? Where do you see this going? Or are we limited kind of to the device that we have? I can't grab it, but the device that's right next to me now, pointing out the window. What can we expect? Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So okay. Let me just talk a little bit about the supply and who's making them. So today, well, maybe some of your newer audiences, viewers aren't going to know about this, but Helium doesn't build the hotspot anymore. So I showed you earlier what we call the OG hotspot. We don't make them anymore. And part of the reason why we don't is because, again, we open sourced everything. And the purpose of us creating this effort in an open source way is to reduce barrier of adoption. And that includes reducing barrier for others to build and to create and to, monetize on their work to build hardware. And so we started with a company called Rack Wireless. It's a LoRaWAN gateway and sensor manufacturer out of Shenzhen, China. They were our contract manufacturer for the original hotspot. And so it was just easy for us to approach them and say, hey, we don't want to build this anymore, but the IP is free. It's open source. Would you do it? Would you build this yourself if we gave you all the rights and enabled you to do it? And they said, sure, happy to do so. And so they were the first third-party independent manufacturer of this new Helium, I think they call it an H&T miner or H&T mining gateway or something like that, or mining hotspot. I think it's called the Rack Wireless H&T mining hotspot, maybe. Sorry, lots of names. So they were the first, and they hit the market. Good news, bad news, they made like, I don't know, 12,000 or 13,000 units or something like that. Sold out in like 4 hours, unfortunately, which is great. Lots of demand. It's also bad in that Rack as well as Helium. We just did a really poor job of forecasting. And the effects of, my fault, the effects of not forecasting well in hardware is that it has like implication of weeks of delay. Because we didn't forecast for the demand, which was probably in the 36 to 40,000 unit realm, not 12.
Wow.
We are short by a lot. And I think under normal circumstances, being short on that kind of forecast means that you're waiting another 8 weeks for the factory to like get the parts, spin up the tools to like build the thing in an efficient way, and then shipping it out to you, right? Well, you take that 8-week lead time, and then you add COVID problems. So factories can't run 24/7 with the full staff, right? They reduced everything by like 66% so that everyone can remain safe. They should do that, no question. But that slows your ability to build. So you're 8 weeks now, you get to add on more delays. And then we learned something about hardware supply chain, which is very difficult, is that everything coming from China goes through inspection at customs in the United States. And that inspection process at customs a long time, depending on what it is. And during COVID, it took even longer. Not that they didn't want to let the thing in, it's just that they have protocols. They have to do their inspections, and they can't do them as fast as they did before. They just aren't allowed to have as many customs officers on staff at the same time. So again, that adds delays. And so unfortunately, that's created a massive wait list and delay that's a lot longer than we wanted. Instead of 2-3 months delay, it's probably now 5-6 month delay. I know a lot of people are upset and unhappy with that. I just want to remind you, making hardware and selling hardware and shipping it is incredibly hard. It's not even the same category as software. You can download, you make a mistake, you can just patch it, download it again, super easy. But when you talk about hardware, it is a whole different ballgame, and it's very difficult. So granted, 5-6 months is unacceptable. It's so frustrating. I'm more frustrated than anybody else. Part of it's my fault for not forecasting correctly, but we had no idea. We just did not know.
I suppose it's a good problem, right? It's a good problem to have, but is there any thought out there in terms of we know that the system itself is decentralized. Is there a way that, hey, let's offer the patent out to the community and say, guys, build this thing yourself, let this thing rip, and let the community find it, right? Yeah.
And we have done that. So we are adding 3 more vendors to the mix. Bobcat is going to ship in China in March. Bobcat's a manufacturer out of China. They're the largest LoRa manufacturer actually in the world. So they have great capacity. I'm very confident in Bobcat. So it's called the Bobcat H&T miner. Nebra is another company and manufacturer out of the UK. In Nebra, they've got a few thousand units coming as well. And I believe they're shipping in March as well. March or April, something along those lines. So that's 2. And then the third is a company called Syncrobit. And they're an early startup on the East Coast somewhere. And I suspect they'll, we just finished testing their product and it works. So I suspect they'll start to ramp up, and they should be able to, ship units in the, hopefully in summertime. I don't know exactly when, but hopefully it's summertime. So that to me tells me that you've got 3 additional vendors with good capacity. We know the forecast out there right now is about 150,000 units for this year.
Wow.
So,
wow.
yeah. So
That's
we're no longer in the
incredible.
league of 30,000. We're in the league of 150,000, and the forecast is there. So now we're forecasted correctly.
That's awesome. Wow. I mean, just thinking back to 2019, how this thing has grown. This is true, orders of magnitude. So kudos to you guys. It's incredible to see this play out. It's very, very cool. One question that I do get is pretty simple to answer, but talk to us about privacy on the network, right? So anybody who has the app, you're seeing where these devices are located physically.
Yeah.
Is there any concern on your end from a company standpoint, from a user standpoint for privacy? And how can you comment on that?
Yeah, it's probably our least favorite part of the system, because proof of coverage means that your hotspot needs to prove itself to be useful, like it's providing coverage and it's in a place that's well suited to provide coverage. Then you technically need to know where that coverage is. That's sort of the whole point. And the unfortunate side effect of that is that there is exposure to, hey, where your hotspot's located on this block or in this 3-block radius in this town, on this street, or around these streets. We can't obfuscate that completely. Like what we've done is try to make it less precise so that it's not exactly within, within feet of the hotspot of location, but so it's like within the 3-block radius kind of deal. But still, that's, you're still within a 3-4 block radius, which isn't great. And so that's our least favorite part from a security, from a physical security perspective. The other aspects of security is a lot better, and I think incredibly well done. So when it comes to encryption, the data is handled via physical encryption keys that's on both the sensor device as well as the hotspots themselves. So they all have this hardware-based ECC chip on there that secures the keys. So that does wonders from a cyber security perspective and data protection perspective. The data is fully encrypted and always encrypted until the owner receives it in their data store. That's very important. The other is the hotspot security itself. The hotspot's fairly simple. It needs access to the internet. It only has one outbound port, one inbound port. It's well defined, so you can isolate that on a DMZ or firewall if you like, and that's very low risk. It's not impenetrable. Nothing is on the internet, just so you know. But it's low risk. Yep. Relative to all the other things connected to your home network, like your printers and your Sonos device and your Ring doorbells. All of those things are connected through your home network, and you guys all have those things. So Helium is not worse than that, slightly better, but not perfect.
So final notes here. In terms of where you see this in 2022, 2023, from a forecasting standpoint, you're talking about another 150,000 units. China's getting uploaded right now. We think that that's going to grow pretty well. Europe is expanding. Where do you see the token going in terms of not necessarily price standpoint, but use, right? Like right now, do you see this kind of morphing into something else? Do you see larger companies trying to adopt this and leveraging a smaller network like this? How do you see this play out?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two key crossroads, or 2 key milestones, I should say, not crossroads, but 2 key milestones coming up. One is structurally, the architecture of the network is evolving. So we're moving to a validator staking model. That's one that we announced about a week ago. The testnet's coming up live on Thursday this week. That has received just unexpected demand. And what that means is our full node of the blockchain is no longer going to be on each individual hotspot, as I showed you earlier. The network has gotten so big that that's becoming very inefficient. And so for the sake of performance and efficiency, we have to move to a validator model that can live on AWS or Google Cloud Platform or Azure, whatever, any data center, or you can host it yourself. And that'll enable validators to stake themselves to be trustworthy and to hold a copy of the blockchain and to communicate with all the edge hotspots to make sure everyone is up to date. So that's a shift in our model. And we didn't know, again, how many people would want to do this, but we've got over 2,000 folks signed up for it.
Wow.
And of the 2,000, over 2,000, that roughly 80% want to be in the test and stand up their their own servers and validators. That's very exciting, and so that allows our network to scale really indefinitely, which is what we need to be a global network. So that's huge. And the validators, by the way, are spread across 73 countries, which is also fantastic because you want
decentralized. Yep,
very decentralized. You want diversity. The other milestones are really related to usage, right? The usage of the network, who's using it, how quickly can they ramp? And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of this is hardware related, which takes a lot longer than just pure software. But having said that, we've got new customers like Airly, which is an air quality sensor company that signed on recently with us, and they're deploying air quality sensors across different cities, both in Europe and in the United States. For California, I think it's fantastic. It's wonderful. We have seasonal wildfires that burn 80% of the state every summer.
Yep.
Love to know that I can go outside and breathe. So huge helpful product and service that they're providing. Lone Star Asset Tracking is another asset tracking company that tracks trucks and cars and heavy equipment. They're using a network in various cities now. Stillful is a maritime tracking for boats and yachts at different ports and different marinas in the United States. And so we've got a bunch of applications such as that, as well as like car parking tracking in like Huntington Beach, California. A company called Noble Systems has a smart parking solution that they sell to cities for letting you know if the parking space is available or not, letting the city know. So there's a bunch of applications coming on board now. We onboarded probably 60 new customers last year. And in January alone, we signed on 10 more just in 1 month. So it's looking promising, right? The pace is growing. We've scaled up our business development team quite a bit. And so that's all growing rapidly. So we're pretty happy about that. But those are like really, I think, the important metrics for folks looking into this is, how is the network growing? Does it have potential to scale massively? The answer is yes. Do we need to make some structural changes? Yes, we do, and it's happening. Are people adopting this? And the answer is yes. And the more you have network coverage, the more I think customers and users will use it. It's like Airbnb, right? The more you have homes up for Airbnb, the more people will use it instead of going to a hotel.
Absolutely.
It just has to be there. So we're starting to see that effect. And then the last thing I'll mention from a technology roadmap perspective before we sign off is, our mission and goal was always to create this IoT network that's ubiquitous and very low cost, easy to use. What we've learned over the last 3.5 years, is that the feature that we created called the blockchain is actually useful and usable on any wireless infrastructure. It doesn't have to be IoT. It doesn't have to be LoRaWAN. It can run on Wi-Fi. It can run on LTE, 5G. So you can imagine if someone did want to take the blockchain and build Wi-Fi networks or 5G networks at a lightning pace, leveraging consumers, definitely possible.
Awesome stuff. Well, it's been amazing to watch you guys grow. I'm super proud to be somewhat part of the community and be involved throughout the years. So awesome job, man. I want to touch base over the next few months, and then we'll touch base in a couple of years too and see all the progress you guys have made. But great catching up with you, and I appreciate you giving me the time, and look forward to seeing the Helium network grow and continue to scale. So kudos to you guys. Awesome job.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
I hope you enjoyed the interview. I hope you enjoyed the quality content that we're providing for you guys. Please subscribe to our channel down below, and always check out some of the new videos that we have available. If there's somebody you want to see as an interviewee on our channel, let us know. We'll reach out. Thank you guys. I appreciate the support, and as always, subscribe.